Compassion is something that I think is more easily felt than defined. But if you really pushed me to define compassion, I'd say it's empathy and the desire and will to do something about it. And I grew up surrounded by this kind of compassion. My mom was a social worker, and I just remember her coming home and how much love she had for the people that she worked with and how much she gave to them. And my dad was an extreme alcoholic. And everyone around him had so much compassion for him and his disease. My grandparents, my mom, my sister, even the guy that sold me baseball cards, everybody was trying to help my dad in some way. But I also grew up confronted by the limitations of individual compassion alone. I also remember my mom coming home day after day and telling me how hard her job was, how hard it was to pull the families out of poverty that she was working with, and how many more families in poverty she'd never have the opportunity to reach. And my dad at one point became homeless. I remember going to visit him in his car, and then he went on to pass away from liver failure in his 40s. The people that my mom couldn't help, and the fact that my dad couldn't get the help that he needed, it was really hard. It was really sad. But as I grew older, I think the harder thing for me was seeing that individual compassion alone wasn't enough to solve these problems. The people extending compassion, my mom, those around my dad, they were giving so much of themselves, and it wasn't enough. That, to me, was devastating. And it was even more devastating when I started to put this into context of what was going on around me in my community. Now, I won't take you back to Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is where I grew up, but let's just take a look at what's happening around us in Utah. 1 in 5 will drop out of high school this year. Nearly 22% of children will struggle with hunger at some point. And almost half of those who have been in prison will return there within the next 3 years. Our communities face huge challenges. So back to my story, back to Grand Rapids, Michigan. So when I'm seeing the limitations of individual compassion alone, and when I'm starting to understand the size and complexity of the challenges that we face in our communities, these were my formative years, 15, 16, 17, 18, those years. The years when I stopped believing that I could become a professional soccer player, although I was fairly good. And I started to really figure out what the heck I was going to do with my life. And so I decided to commit myself to making compassion go further, so that people like my mom, teachers, social workers, volunteers, anybody extending compassion could actually give us a shot at solving these problems. Now, worth noting that I did not commit to that hairstyle. You're all breathing a sigh of relief. And I did commit to that young woman whom I'm marrying later this year, finally. Yes. She'll appreciate that. So I've now been on this journey of trying to figure out how to make compassion go further for several years. From doing a year of service in AmeriCorps to working with some of our most venerable social entrepreneurs addressing social mobility in this country, to now figuring out how to unleash the power of design to solve social problems. And along the way, I've seen incredible inspiration around how people are making compassion go further. I'll share just a few. So individuals are giving and volunteering in smarter ways. And they're logging onto platforms like Benevolent and giving money directly to those in need in the moments that matter most. So they're helping Christine from facing eviction. Through platforms like Catch a Fire, they're being matched to opportunities to use their very real professional skills to make nonprofit organizations more effective, building a website or helping them do better fundraising. Nonprofit organizations are using technology to deepen and scale their impact. For example, rethink, an organization in Chicago which places college volunteers in low-income high schools to teach financial literacy, saw the need to move their curriculum and mentor-mentee relationships out of the classroom into the real world where their students were making real financial decisions. So they created rethink Mobile, which allows rethink mentors to interact with students in those very moments. Foundations are using new strategies and tools to gain empathy from those they work with and seek to serve. I love the simplicity of this example. So our very own MC, Jessamine, and her team at the Perry Foundation created funder feedback. So at the bottom of every one of Jessamine and team's emails is an opportunity to provide anonymous feedback. So they're actively working to disrupt the power dynamics that have gotten in the way of great philanthropy in the past. And no, she didn't pay me. Corporations are creating shared value for communities and their employees. You guys may have heard of this one. Starbucks entered into a partnership with Arizona State University to provide most of its retail employees a pathway to college graduation. So if you work at a Starbucks more than 20 hours a week, you can go online, take classes to more than 49 degree-granting programs, and Starbucks is going to pay for 4 years of full tuition. I think that is spectacular. Even our government is trying to figure out how to make compassion go further. So as you can tell from this diagram, it might take me 4 hours to explain this concept to myself and then back to you. But a social impact bond is, in essence, a way for the government to only pay for successful social programs. So if that recidivism program in your community isn't producing results, the government doesn't pay, the private and philanthropic sectors do. They're even experimenting with this in Salt Lake City. New ways of gaining empathy, new ways of acting on empathy, new technology, new partnerships, even new financing mechanisms. And I'm only scratching the surface at how people all across this country are making their compassion go further. This leads me to believe that we are living in a renaissance of compassion. A renaissance of smarter compassion, a renaissance that acknowledges the serious complexity of the problems that we're trying to solve, and that no one individual can solve them alone, that we must practice compassion in every corner of our communities, in every facet of society, yet a renaissance that's built upon the foundation of individual compassion that I experienced growing up, which is a profound love for one another, the willingness to step into each other's shoes, and the desire and will to help. Now, I wanted to raise this renaissance today because I believe that it is built upon a foundation of everybody, and I mean everyone, finding ways to practice compassion in new and smarter ways. What can students in a class do? How about their teachers, entrepreneurs, neighbors, friends, philanthropists? What can all of us do? So instead of leaving you with an idea tonight, I leave you with a question. How can you make your compassion go further? Thank you.